Well, years later, he goes on all these shows, and one of them was Joey Behar, and tells him that I had conspired with his wife, which I hadn't talked to
Uh,
probably in 10 years, to keep this quiet. And I told him, I said, dude, do you really think anybody cares if Sam had a daughter and
some people would be
everything else?
excited by that to know that
Huh?
he left a legacy. Some people would be excited to know that he has
Yeah.
left a legacy.
But the way she found out, and she was 16 at the time, was Carl on the Howard Stern show
Yeah.
saying, this is not my daughter. This is Sam Kinison's daughter.
That's how she found out.
That's how she found out, was
That's
hearing,
terrible.
and he had not seen her since she was 6 years old. He never paid a dime of child support, not one dime. So he owed him
Terrible.
over $200,000 in child support. As beautiful as you are, you
That's
really
such a
look. I mean, you always look great, but you look happy and
thank
everything.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't always feel great, you know.
Well,
Age creeps up and you get the aches
no,
and the
wait
pains
till
and
you get to my age. You're just happy if you can get out of bed.
I was telling someone, I was like, they're like, oh, I did something at work really fast. And they're like, oh, you're Speedy Gonzalez. I says, not when I try to stand up after sitting a while. I said, it takes me a while just to stand up. Oh my
Everything
gosh.
they tell us about old age, and I finally have accepted it, is a lie.
It is a
There's
lie.
nothing good about it. And I found out, or I've realized, that there's a real prejudice towards old people.
There is.
There really is. I mean,
I
it's
agree.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Didn't somebody, oh, a long, long time ago, they dressed up as an old person to prove that point, how they're treated differently. They're treated, yeah, almost like an outcast.
You know, it really is. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping now we have a good, I don't have to want to get into politics, but we have good leadership now. And I'm hoping that we see some really good changes.
Well,
And
I'm excited about it.
yeah,
I have always considered myself an independent, and I have voted. I voted for Clinton, and I still thought he was a good president. I voted for Obama. I thought that was a mistake.
yeah.
Uh,
Not twice, though. Tell me you didn't vote
no,
for
no,
him
I
twice.
actually only voted for him the last time, and the only reason was he was running against John McCain, and I
Oh,
thought John McCain was more Democrat than Barack Obama was.
yeah.
And
Yeah. I agree with that.
then the first time that Trump beat Hillary, I didn't vote for either one of them because I felt like Hillary was like one of the biggest crooks ever in politics. And I didn't know what you was getting with Donald Trump, so I thought I'll let everybody else
Yeah.
decide. This second time, I was actually a victim of voter fraud,
No
and so
way.
yeah, that they send you out a little
Yeah.
thing, guys, in California,
Yeah.
tell you where you vote at for your where you live and all that, and it's always been the same place. Well, I went there, and they went, "Well, you're in the wrong place, so you got to go to this other place." So I went to
Okay.
this other place, and they said, "Well, no, you're at the wrong place. You got to go to this third place." And so I went to the third place, and they told me, "No, you got to go to this fourth place." So I go to this fourth place, and they go, "You're not registered to vote." And I said, "I've been voting since I was old enough to vote."
It's
And
crazy.
but I was going to vote for Trump because I thought he did a great job overcoming not only Democrats but Republicans in the first term there. Uh,
Yep.
this time, I did vote uh, for Donald Trump, and I may turn off all of your listeners or something, but I thought that
No. Can
stolen
I tell
from
you
me.
something? My listeners love Trump. Trust me.
Well,
Trust me.
I really felt like it was stolen from him,
Yeah.
and or I mean in 20. Then we have 4 years of Biden.
Yeah.
And now that you're finding out, and I was saying that stuff actually, on my Sunday program about that, I felt sorry for him. For 4 years, I felt sorry for him that they will keep trotting him out there
They kept putting him out there.
and
Yep.
we knew, and they really knew
Yeah.
that he was incognito. And now we find out, I don't think, they released a thing, what that said Friday was the first time he'd been diagnosed. I don't believe that
No.
by any means. And then when you start looking at the side effects of if you have prostate cancer, you fall, your balance, your cognizant,
Yeah.
everything else. So
They
my
have a
question,
clip, they have a clip in 2022 where he actually said, I have cancer. And they said,
yeah,
oh, it was just a gaffe. Then he fell off
well,
the
everything
bike.
was a gaffe.
Yeah, everything was a
No, I
gaffe.
saw that. I saw that clip,
Yeah.
and I'm one of these that think Jill first should be charged with elder
Elder
abuse,
abuse. I agree.
and I want to know who was running our country. I
Yeah.
really, because it wasn't him.
Well, I think you mentioned his name before. He was the
Well,
one running against
that's who I
McCain.
think. That's
Yeah.
who I think was. But he had to have a bunch of people involved in it,
A whole
and
team.
I do hope, and they can call it revenge,
Yeah.
lawfare, or whatever they want. Right is right,
Yeah.
and the destruction that he and Kamala Harris did to this country for 4 years is unforgivable. And what they
Unforgivable.
did to Donald Trump in their lawfare, and they can still deny it all they want to,
Yeah.
to me is unforgivable.
Yeah.
And I was not a Trumpster, but I told I did some interview and they asked me about this, and I said, I still consider myself an independent. I mean, the Democrats are never going to come up with, maybe in my lifetime,
Right.
a viable candidate for president. But I consider myself I consider myself an independent. And so I said I would be their target to try to get me to vote Democrat. And you look at what they're doing and what they're saying, and no wonder Donald Trump has got a 55% approval rating,
Mm-hmm.
which is almost unheard of. And that was from 4 different pollsters.
Yep.
And
Yep.
no, and I love what he's done. I can't think of one thing that he has done that I don't wholeheartedly agree with. I really can't.
And he
What's
doesn't, and
amazing is he is
yeah.
2 years older than me.
And the
And
energy, right?
yeah, but I told Sherry the other day, I said, can you imagine me running the country? And he's 2 years older than me.
Yeah. And he gets like 3 hours, 4 hours sleep.
Yeah, that's what I have read
Yeah.
that it has. And so they can blame me all they want. And I lost a lot of I had a deal, and it was on July the 7th was my program. On July 4th, I watched a thing on television. And it was something about like the myths and whatever of patriots, and they were talking about the miracles that literally happened when we became a country and we fought England. Am I all right?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. And so I was watching that, and I was thinking of the miracles. One was they called the Battle of the Fog, and it was one of the first battles that they had. And I didn't realize that Britain was already over here because they thought this was their country. So they didn't come over to fight everybody. They thought, so they had 54,000 troops on Long Island. And they had this battle that George Washington was their general. And if they lose this battle, it's probably all over with. And so he started retreating, and he left a few people there to fight and looked like they were still fighting, but they were getting in boats and was going out in the middle of the night. Well, the British found out where they were at and what they were doing. And they literally called it the Battle of the Fog because the fog came in and they couldn't see even 3 feet in front of them. And that's how the rest of them escaped. And George Washington kept on doing that victory. Well, I started thinking about it, and it was like God put in my heart that Donald Trump, and at that time, I really don't promote one or the other on my program. It's a motivational spiritual program. But I told him on July the 7th when we had our program, and I said, I'm not telling you who to vote for. You vote for whoever your heart tells you to vote for. But I believe that Donald Trump is destined to be our 47th president. And I believe there will be an attempt on his life, and it won't be successful because I really believe that this is his destiny to be our 47th president.
Wow.
Denise,
that's a revelation.
I lost literally hundreds of followers. And my response was, hey, if that's what that's okay. The line you want to draw, that's up to you.
Yeah.
Because I'll do it if I got 5 people.
Listen, let God deal with them. That's okay, because you know what? At the end of the day, as long as we're speaking the truth, that's what matters.
That's what makes you free. And I'm not talking about the Bible or anything. The truth in your life.
We could see with our own eyes the difference between the last 4 years and the 4 years before that. And now what we're seeing now. He's only in office a few months. And look at my gosh, we're going to have tax cuts. They close the borders. We're getting rid of all these gang members and criminals out of this country. He's making so much progress. How could anyone say we were better under Biden?
Well, I thought a good example was yesterday. And I don't hardly watch the news anymore.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But I was watching President Trump with the president from South Africa.
Yes, I saw that.
Denied that, that these white farmers, something like 5,000 of them have been slaughtered and their farms taken away from them. And so Donald Trump puts up this slide or this film. And the guy is still denying it. But what really got me was now they're taking questions. And a guy from NBC in the middle of this wants to know about the jet that Syria or Saudi Arabia, I guess, is given to him. Now, these people think they're just giving it. No, it's just while he's president.
Yeah.
Then they get the jet back. But I thought, Donald Trump just went off on him, and I thought, I can't believe this.
Wasn't that the best?
Dealing with people dying.
Yeah, and that's what they talk about. Yeah.
And you want to ask him about a jet.
Yeah.
That's how ridiculous this has got.
You know what? They're so scripted. They're puppets. Do you think they come up with these questions on their own? No.
Nope.
And they're not even questions.
They are sent with them. Even Donald Trump said even Brian Roberts, which I guess is the whatever top guy, sent him with those questions.
Yeah.
But how you got a Congress lady? First, we never even heard of her until this. That assaulted ICE members and everything. And you got the Democrats now that are going, we're going to go into every ICE facility. Well, help yourself. One of them still got in, and he said everything's fine, everything's good.
Yeah.
But you have to assault people because she's in the middle of a race that she'll probably lose. And to get that attention, this is ridiculous to me.
She might face jail time. She might face jail time.
I hope she does.
What would happen if you did that or if I did that?
Well, I tell you, we'd be in jail.
Yeah. There are protocols they have to follow. They have to get 24-hour notice that they want to see the facility. They know that.
But they know that.
And you notice it's all psyop. They want to show, look, they're keeping us out. What are they hiding? Look at what they're doing. They did the same thing with the Board of Education. Remember? They
Oh yeah.
demanded to go inside the building. I like that guy. I don't know who he was. He just stood there, la 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 la. You're not coming
He
in.
just like, help yourself. You're still not
Loved it.
going in.
I loved it. Yep. But
But
I don't know.
who the Democrats got that's going to convince me that they're a leader? They do not have one single person.
Yeah.
I mean, you had these two Jewish people.
Oh, so sad.
Beautiful. That they were getting engaged, but they're waiting until they go to Israel to officially do it, and they meet. She's going to meet his family, and they get shot out here.
So awful.
And I forget which idiot it was. It wasn't AOC. It was the other one, and she's coming out of the Capitol building, and they asked her, "Have you got anything to say about that?" And she refused to answer, refused to say a word.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
Anti-Semitic.
yeah,
If you can't even call that murder, doesn't matter if they're Jew, it doesn't matter what they are. They were murdered
yeah.
in cold blood. And you can't speak out against that. They're not for the people. It's so obvious they're not for the people. And I like the AOC and who's the other one where they're flying with their oligarchy tour, right? Bernie Sanders, but they're flying
Oh
on their
God.
$1 million jets. Okay. How do you think they're getting around? Oh,
Well, and that's wasn't even his money he earned. That was what he married into. That's his wife's money.
Yeah.
She's got to be so proud.
Gosh.
So proud.
I don't know. All I know is, well, thank God we have good leadership now. And I agree with you 1,000%. God put him there. And he even said
I
it. God
believe that.
spared my life. Yeah, so I can free this country. Yeah.
I said a week or two ago, I said, I dealt with this when I was in the ministry. Sherry and I started in a time where black folks went to their church, white folks went to their church, and we were probably one of the first white preachers that actually preached in black churches. And we were hated by white preachers because we did that, and we was hated by black preachers because we did that. But I mean, we dealt with that prejudice.
Yeah.
Later on, with the gays, we had to deal with that because most of our musicians that we hired, especially the organists, they were gay because they were the best organists there. I didn't care what their sexual preference was. Yeah. And we dealt with that. And I preached, and I taught a very controversial message, but we were very, very successful. I held crusades in a lot of the venues that Sam later on, when he was big, did his shows in. It was kind of funny because I would walk in and they're all union houses. And I would walk in with Sam and they go, well, Reverend Kinison, good to see you again. I go, yeah, it's a little different message this time.
Right.
And, but, you think about what we're going through now. And I thought the people, the preachers, and basically it was the preachers that didn't like me. But they would invite me to the large churches because I'd draw a big crowd. People would give them, they make more money, which they would take half. A lot of people don't know how the churches operate, but the pastor gets half. And then the evangelist gets half. And I was thinking about this, and I told the people, I said, you know what? A lot of you that's upset and you hate Donald Trump, which, by the way, hating someone is like you taking poison to get even with the person you hate. I mean, it's ridiculous. Right. But I said, I would guarantee you that most of you have never never sit and listen to an entire speech by Donald Trump. I promise you, you just hate him. Yeah. And my simple opinion is that the reason that they hate him is because he beat Hillary. She was the one that was groomed that take after, after Obama. I mean, look what the posters was putting out on the day of the election. I thought he was going to lose.
I went
And
to bed that night thinking that he lost. When I woke up, I was so shocked.
I
Yeah.
was too. I was too. But I mean, so it's like I said, but you're going to make judgments without ever listening to the guy that you hate even speak, because you're going to listen to people on the internet. I don't pay any attention to
Yeah.
make their posts. I just don't, because most of them only post what somebody else has written, and it doesn't make any difference if it's true or it's not true. They hate them. Since they hate them, I'm going to repost this. I think it's great, and that's a sad place to be in.
Yeah.
It really is.
But if you think about it, and I know a lot of Democrats who left the Democrat Party and came over and voted for Trump, and now they support MAGA and Trump because they were all friends. I mean, you can find clips where Trump was on The View and Whoopi Goldberg's hugging him and everyone's hugging him. This is before he ran for president. And all these celebrities that are so against him, and I'm going to leave the country if he gets in again, they were all very good friends with him. So
Yeah.
now they see he's draining the swamp. He's exposing all the corruption and the fraud. That's why they hate him, because he's drying up their money train. Because they were, look at Doge, look at everything they found out. All the money that was, all our taxes were going to all these overseas projects that were going back into their pockets.
Yeah.
Back into their pockets. And so that's why they hate him so much, because he's uncovering all the corruption.
Yeah. And he's doing a good job. Well, you got a president first that I don't know if people realize he doesn't take a dime for his pay.
Right.
He gives all of it to charity. And you got Elon Musk, who is doing all this without pay. Absolutely doesn't get paid a dime.
Right.
And you got to think, what would be their motivation? I mean, they've called both of them Hitler. I mean, they take pictures of them lifting their hand up or whatever that's Hitler. And I'm thinking, Jesus God.
I was like, the Statue of Liberty is doing that too. Take a look at the Statue of Liberty, okay?
And I thought, do they realize that 81 million people voted for this guy?
Yeah.
So it isn't like that he come in and stole anything. Yeah. And you're talking about The View. They'll never have me on there. I can tell you, because I know Whoopi Goldberg. I really know
you do.
Whoopi.
I was going to ask you to share that story.
Behar. I really know Joy Behar. Bill Maher will never have me on his program because I really know Bill Maher, and from personal experiences with them.
But do you see Bill Maher coming around a little bit more? Do you think he's opening up a little, right? I mean, he went and he had dinner with them, didn't he?
Yeah. But if you look at J.D. Vance, there was a time he disagreed with Donald Trump. I mean, you can go on down the list he has put in his cabinet that there were times they were either Democrats or they strongly disagreed with what his policies was.
Yeah. And Lee Zeldin was one of them, bashing Trump. Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is going to be. I pray every day just for him to survive, because this is a very perilous time, and and you got an idiot like Coney taking a picture, and then he's telling me, or he's trying to tell us, I didn't know what that meant. He was the head of the FBI, and he doesn't know what 86 means.
Yeah.
I owned a bar and a restaurant. I know what an 86 means.
Yeah. I'm going to go one step further, okay?
All right.
So a lot of these people on the left are Luciferians.
Yeah, okay.
they worship Lucifer. No, they do. And in Satanism, numbers are very important because to God, numbers are important. There's even a book of numbers in the Bible. So Satan doesn't create anything, he only copies. So he also requires numbers, things to be done in certain days. So the day that Comey posted that was 8,647 days since September 11th, 2001. So he
I did not
posted
know
that
that.
on that day for a reason. The satanic code, numbers, it all lines up. It wasn't a coincidence. There are no coincidences.
No, there isn't.
So, yeah. So 8647 had a dual meeting. Dual. Yes, 8647 and 8,647 days since September 11th.
When I was in Bible college, my favorite class was the numbers,
Ooh,
meaning of numbers. It was my favorite class, and it was really eye-opening, and it was just so interesting to me. So
yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's any accidents, period. I don't think what we're going through is an accident.
No.
And I also don't think that it will end up in, disaster or the end of the world. Preachers always, every time you have something like this, you got spiritual leaders or religious leaders, I should say, always bring up Armageddon. This is Armageddon. This is the end of the world. Jesus is coming and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Let me tell y'all, it's not going to. Matter of fact, it said the end is not until God is all in all. So we got a long ways to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Still a lot of prophecies need to be fulfilled before the end
Oh, yeah.
comes. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I remember the Chinese, I don't even know who they were, some group on 42nd Street in Manhattan, and this had to be like in the 80s with big signs. The end is near September. They had a date. They had a date. It was like September 20th, 1988 or whatever it was. And I'm like, should I be worried? I don't know. Like, so
Well, you
I
got to
don't.
remember, especially in religion and in politics, but in religion, the way that they they have done it intentionally and methodically. The way that they keep members and add members is two ways. First, fear and
Yes.
ignorance. They make you afraid not to be there.
Yes.
And then they really don't tell you anything because they're ignorant, and knowledge is power. So
Yeah.
if you think you're going to go into religion and get this enlightenment, you're not going to. It either starts within you or you're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's a good point. Well, look at like Heaven's Gate. Do you remember Heaven's Gate?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All those followers. And then Koresh and Waco, you get people that are you keep them in fear and like you said, ignorant, and they'll follow you to the death.
Jim Jones had a church in Indianapolis. And actually, my father in law rented, nobody knew what this guy was. But he had this church. And so my father in law decided he wanted to go to Indianapolis and preach revival. He asked Sherry and I if we'd go with him. And I said, sure, we'll go. And it was one of the strangest, weird places I had ever been in. And I told him after the first night, I said, you need to get out of here. There's nothing good going to happen here. And he listened to me, and we went, I think after one night, we went back to Rockford. But even, I mean, that was before they moved to California and then, went down to Africa and all died. But you knew then, something is not right here. And people need to listen to that.
Yeah. So
In
you
their life.
sensed it. You
Yeah.
sensed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I've done a lot of things in my life, you know what?
Got great stories and you have a great memory. I got to share this with you. So Sally Struthers, I was talking with her the other day. We talked through text. I interviewed her um a while back and we stayed in touch. And I said, oh, I'm going to have Bill Kinison on my show, Sam's brother. And yeah, I understand that you were friends with him or you met him. And she says,
Who's
I don't,
this?
Sally Struthers, little
Oh, yeah,
Gloria.
Sally Struthers. Yeah. Yeah.
She has no memory. I sent her the picture of the two of them. She says, I have no memory of that picture. She said, it's like I met so many people in my life. It's one big blur. But what amazes me about you, Bill, is you have such a crisp memory, sharp memory, and you remember vividly. So do you remember how they met?
Oh yeah.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
How did they meet?
I think that some of it is like my wife tells me, intentional amnesia. You know, that we, some of them we were friends with and stuff, and then with Sam, with kind of, he was just truthful and honest on how he saw things, and so once he, got public and all that, well, all of a sudden they didn't know him.
Oh,
He worked for Pat Robertson, and I have a picture of him and Pat Robertson. I can guarantee you that Pat Robertson would have told you, I don't know him. I don't know him. So, but we're still here.
yes, you are. 33 years, Bill. 33 years since he's
Yeah.
gone. How do you keep his legacy alive? Like, how do you, for the young generation, so they know who
It's
Sam Kinison is?
it's kind of interesting because I don't actively go out and try to shop projects or anything else because it's like you said, it's been 33 years.
Yeah.
And but people have contacted me. We're working literally on 3 projects right now. And I really
Nice.
can't go into detail on them. But one is a mini series. Another is a book on my family because be honest with you, Sam really wasn't the most unconventional in my family. I mean, my dad was in the mafia and ended up being a preacher, which I didn't know till years later, and I didn't even know from him. But I got to be friends with different mafia guys that were high up. Louis Dragnet was one of my best friends. He and his brother were the head of the mafia in California and in Las Vegas, and they actually arrested Louis for the murder of Bugsy Siegel, but they couldn't prove it, so they sent him to jail for a while for income tax evasion.
Cool.
And he knew my dad, and I didn't even know it at that time until he told me. And
So was this before he was married to your mother?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He was in St. Louis, and he married my mother when he was 35. My mother was 16,
Right.
and he was in the ministry. And he never told us anything, and I was as close to him probably as anybody in this world. He would never tell me the first 35 years of his life. He just never would. And but there was like, when I look back, because you don't think to look at that. I mean, if you don't know it, you don't think to go, well, I'm going to find out if my dad's was in the mafia.
Right.
But I remember a cousin of his contacted me that was watching my program, and he's the first one that goes, your dad was in the mafia. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, yeah. And he goes, yeah. I said he owned 2 nightclubs and a dump truck business in St. Louis, which I knew that. I knew that he had, but I wasn't thinking of any connection. And then I had an uncle, which was he was the nephew of my dad, but they were about the same age, and he lived in Granite City. And then one night he's telling me, man, your dad's a tough guy. And I'm like a teenager at that time. And I go, yeah, he's pretty tough. He said, yeah, we used to take care of business every Friday night.
Ooh.
And I'm going, what kind of business you guys take care of? He goes, your dad will tell you if he wants you to know. Well, I guess I'm kind of slow because I never was putting this stuff together.
Well, I'm sure the mafia was the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, especially as a preacher.
Right.
And but it kind of made sense because when the Church of God, he was their Jimmy Swaggart, he was their national evangelist, and then they gave him their biggest church in the Northwest sector, just outside Yakima, Washington. And then one night, I guess he had got too far out on his preaching, and so the overseer, which had been pastor of this church, fired him right at the end of the service. And I remember I was only 5 years old, and I remember it vividly. I remember what he preached, and I remember when
Wow.
this guy fired him, and the men in the church getting up was going to come down and whip this guy's ass. My dad picked up a chair and protected him. Well,
Wow.
the next night or two, it was Christmas time, like a week before Christmas. Sam had just been born, maybe a week or two before that. And I was looking out and I was watching the snow come down. And I'm looking out the window. We lived in a beautiful home next door to the bank president. And it was like a scene out of The Godfather. This big dark sedan pulled up, four guys in overcoats and fedora hats get out, and they come to the door and they ask my dad to go with them. And so he did. And at 5 years old, I knew this wasn't good. And I was banging on the window and yelling at him, "Don't hurt my daddy. Don't hurt my daddy."
Oh, wow.
Well, they bring him back in a while. I don't know what it was, 30 minutes, an hour, two, I don't know. And my mother said, "What'd they tell you?" And he said, "Well, we have a week to get out of the parsonage, and I can never preach in another Church of God church." So we moved from there to the projects, the same ones that Richard Pryor was raised in Peoria, Illinois. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
we spent the early years of our life. As I grew up, I kept asking Dad, "What'd they tell you in that car?" Because my dad was a little bit, I guess Sam and I were a little bit like him. We weren't afraid of anything. And I knew he wasn't, any man or anything else. And he never would tell me until the last conversation I had with him. And it was 6 weeks before he died, which we didn't know he was going to die. It wasn't like he had cancer or anything.
Yeah.
And he told me that I surprised him 2 o'clock in the morning. We were up all night. He really was in my life my best friend, besides my dad.
Yeah.
And he said about daylight was going to go have some breakfast, and he said, "I want you to promise me something." And I said, "Okay, what's that?" And I had just gotten the ministry for maybe a couple years before that. And he goes, "I want you to promise to preach my funeral." And I'm like, "Dad, you're not going anywhere. You'll end up preaching all of our funerals." And he goes, "No, no, the Lord woke me up a couple weeks ago and said he's going to take me before long." And so, even then, Dad's going to die one day, but not then. He's 63.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks later, he died. But one of the things that I was smart on, so I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll promise to preach your funeral," which I never preached one. He was the first one I ever preached, "if you'll
Hmm.
tell me what they told you in that car." And so
Smart.
he said, "They told me that if I ever preached another Church of God church, they would harm me and my family." And I go, "What kind of preachers was that?" He said, "It wasn't preachers." Well, now I understood, because the mafia
Yeah.
had worked with churches, and especially the Catholic Church, and did that kind of stuff if it needed to be done.
Wow. So
And so,
explain that a little bit, Bill. What does that mean? So are they controlling these churches? They're taking money from
no, they
the
don't. They
church?
don't control them,
No?
but it's not free.
Okay,
And I,
right.
I know
Okay.
of preachers that were murdered and
Wow.
stuff. And but that's what they do.
It's
They
like
got a problem with
protection
somebody,
money.
huh?
Okay. It's like protection money, like
Yeah.
businesses would.
Well, and if Dad was in the mafia, which I really believe now, they would have sent them.
Yeah.
Because he could have related with them, and he would have known that they're not kidding around and stuff. Where if it had been four preachers, Dad probably would have beat the hell out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And from then on, even when we went back to Peoria, because he's he's always stayed under the radar. And I didn't understand it. But until all of this started coming to light, then I understood it. And so that's good old Christian way.
Wow. So this is going to be in the book that's coming out. You're going to
Yeah.
touch on this.
Well, like I said, my dad married my mother. That was her first date, and that was her first boyfriend. And they went off to Niagara Falls and eloped. My grandmother went with them because she wasn't old enough to get married.
Yeah.
And so, you got that whole situation. And then you got my brother Richard is born, and he's severely mentally handicapped. He's
Yes.
blind and so uncoordinated. He doesn't walk till he's over 4 years old. At 13, he said an angel appeared to him and he could heal himself, and he was healed. He ended up being the best evangelist I ever seen, or any other preachers that seen him. And then you got Sam that comes along and gets hit by a truck, totally changes his personality, ends up being one of the top 5 comedians of all time. And then you had me, and you had my younger brother Kevin, which we always called the normal one because he was
Yeah.
normal
Tell me
compared to
about
all the
Kevin.
rest of us. So
Oh, I know.
it's an interesting family.
So tell me a little bit about Kevin. So was he a musician?
He
Did
was a
he?
drummer
He was a drummer.
and a studio drummer out in California, but he did play the drums with some, big bands. And whenever Sam usually had an all-star band, Kevin would be one of the drummers. He's also a model for Barbizon. And
Oh.
he we all went back. My parents, my dad had died, and my mother married Dr. A.D. Marney in Tulsa, and they had a nice, beautiful church. But every year they would have a convention, which is kind of more of a social event than a life-changing experience, because it would be where all these pastors in this group would come, hoping to find an evangelist that they thought could, help their church either in raising money or getting members. And you got all
Right.
these evangelists that come, hoping they get a shot to get up and preach and show them how good they are.
Right.
And so for the first time in probably 6 years, we were all there together. My 4 brothers, my 3 brothers and me. And we went home after. Actually, I went home. I had to get some stuff to FedEx by 2 o'clock to get it back to LA. And I let Sam in, or Kevin, into my mother's house. And we had a great conversation. He was telling me, because I spoke the night before, and his way of telling you it was really good was, man, you were really high energy last night. So I was like, well, thank you, Kevin. So then he was telling me that Sam was going to come back and get him, and they were going to go out to the mall. And did I want to go? And I said, well, if I get back in time, I'll go. If I don't, I'll just meet you guys out there. And I let him in the house. Well, we thought, the police and us thought that he went back in the bedroom, and my parents and Sherry's parents were riding together. They would be in the house probably within 2 minutes, and that he went back and committed suicide. And so that's what the AP reported, that he had committed suicide. So Sam Kinison's brother committed suicide, and we thought so because they told us. And well, about 6 weeks later, I was still in Tulsa, helping my mother and take care of business and taking care of the church and all that. Well, the police detectives called me to come down to the office. I did, and I went down, and they pulled me in their office, and they said, we owe you a gigantic apology. And I said, what's that? So, well, we got a call that this was an attempted suicide. So that's how we handled it. So we botched everything.
Whoa.
But we think it was a homicide. And then they started telling me all the reasons. And there's a bunch that they thought, there was no powder on his hands when it got him to that, if you had a gunshot,
Yeah.
they would have that. There was no fingerprints on the gun. The gun,
That means
the
someone wiped it off
yeah, well, either that or wore
or
gloves,
used a glove.
and they had filed off the serial number on it, so they don't know where the gun came from. They found a rag up against a wall that they had wiped the gun clean, and I mean they were just overwhelmingly, and so and it was kind of weird because I felt better when I thought he had committed suicide. I didn't want him to. I couldn't think of him having a few moments of terror.
Sure.
Someone with a gun to the back of his head. And so anyway, and I said, well,
Wow.
what can we do? And they said, well, the coroner will not change it. Said he's made his determination that it's a suicide. I said, well, I'll go out and talk to him. And that was a great experience because I went out and I explained, I know the police have told you what they found and everything. And his words to me was, you guys come out here from Tinseltown,
Oh,
our
serious.
town, and think you're going to control everything. So I made my determination it's going to stay that way. And so
Hmm.
we are actually in the midst of writing a book and getting uh, his file from the police department there in Tulsa and writing a book on it.
Good.
I had a writer that his little when his younger brother when he was little was kidnapped and murdered, and he wrote a book, and he heard about Kevin, and so we talked, had several talks, and so we've got like 3 different projects
Wow. I think that's
that's going
wonderful.
on. So it's an interesting family. The Kinisons were an
Yes.
interesting family.
And very gifted, very gifted.
Yeah,
Even your
hard up
mom,
to get that. My
didn't your
mother
mom
was an
have a
unreal
premonition
singer,
about Sam?
huh?
Didn't your mom have like a premonition or a dream that something was going to happen to Sam
Yeah, she did.
if he got married?
Yeah, about a week before, if less, if not less. Actually, she was supposed to fly down to New Orleans, and we were at the end of this leg, and
Mhm.
then we were going to go home for a day or two, then go to Vegas, and he was going to marry Malika. And so I remember we just played Corpus Christi, and then I thought New Orleans was the last leg, and I thought there's no need for her to come, to come down there because we're flying out the next morning. She would just come down, spend the night, and turn around and go back. So I kept trying to call her, and she wouldn't answer the phone. I had the airport pager, and she would not answer the phone. Well, we get to New Orleans and we walk in. There she is in the lobby. So I told her, I said, Mom, I've been trying to get a hold of you and tell you it's a waste for you to come down just for the night. And so he or she said, I know, I heard all the things over the loudspeaker for me to go to a phone and stuff. But she said, I need to come down. So I said, all right. Well, we went to the show. We came back. We stayed at the Hyatt downtown, and it had a glass elevator. And I remember we're going up against this elevator, and 3 of us, and Sam's, he's tired. He's leaning up against the wall, and I don't guess you had a chance to meet my mother, but
No, I
she
would have
was
loved
a
to.
strong lady and very beautiful and very talented. She could sing and play the piano with anybody. And but anyhow, uh, I had brought up life insurance several times to Sam, especially since he's going to get married. And I think he thought that if he got life insurance, he'd die. And so, but Mom, I remember going up this elevator, and she said, "Well, I'm going to tell you why I flew down here." And she's on one side, he's on the other, and I'm over here on the side, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is not going to be good." And so AD, her husband, had died. And
Oh,
she said, AD came to me and told me to tell you to get your business in order. You're going to die. So I'm expecting Sam to blow a gasket, and he's leaning up against this thing, and he goes, I know, I know.
Wow.
And she wouldn't come to the funeral because she felt like if he married Malika that he'd be cursed or whatever. And so she refused to come to the thing. And Sam himself had, we had conversations 2 or 3 times, which were kind of, just like we were, and he had cleaned up the last year and a half of his life. And, but I remember we were in Austin, and there was only one flight, unless we charter a plane, there was only one flight we could get to get us back to LA in time for Christmas. Went up to his suite. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he opened the door and he'd been crying. And I could tell he hadn't been to bed. And I go, what's going on? And he goes, and he loved my daughter, Ginger. He loved Ginger. I mean, with all his heart.
Mm.
But I remember him telling me, he goes, I don't have a Ginger, man. And I go, what do you mean? He said, that's what you live for. I don't have a Ginger.
Oh.
I don't have somebody to live for. And so I remember I was telling him, man, you got
Wow.
your family. And everything. He said, not the same, man. I don't have a Ginger. So we had that conversation. And then, just maybe a month or less, I had set up a meeting with New Line Cinema, and we agreed on a 3-movie deal. One was with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and one was with Rick Moranis, and then one was an in-concert film. And so they wanted to talk to Sam, see Sam, make sure he's up, he's excited about it. And so in the middle of this meeting, he gets up from the table and goes, well, it really sounds good. If you can work it out with my brother, then we're in business. And so he walks out. Now I got these, I think, 4 or 5 executives looking
Gosh.
at me, and they go, you sure he's into this? And I said, yeah, man. I said, we've been going, hard. And he just wore
Tired.
out, tired. And yeah, but believe me, this is what he's worked for.
Yeah.
So on the way home, I call him on my mobile phone, and I'm going, brother, what's going on? And I said, are you going to, because this would have been a perfect excuse for him to party. And I go, are you
Right.
going to party out or what? What's going on? He said, no, man, I ain't going to do that. I said, I was just sitting there and I realized I've accomplished every goal that I set
Oh.
out to do. And he said, I decided I gotta find some new goals. And so I said, all right. And now we're driving, to Laughlin to do that show and me to sign a 3-year contract. And we pull off. He is supposed to take a plane over because he just took a red eye from Hawaii, and then he's supposed to take this plane over to Vegas, and then limo would take him down to Laughlin. But he's afraid he'd die in a plane accident, so he drove. And we pulled off at the last exit before we got on what they called River Road, and we got gas, and we went up. We talked about some business, and then we got in our vehicles. Well, he always followed me because usually didn't know where he's going, but he pulled out in front of me, and we went about, well, it was 3.2 miles on the highway, and he was hit head on. But what was weird about the whole thing was we're 20 miles from Laughlin. He wants the guys to take everything out of his car, including his dog Russo, a little untrained poodle.
Mm.
And I'm like, dude, we're only 20 miles away. He said, no, I want to get it all out of my car and take Russo with you, which he never went anywhere without Russo. So I said, all right. And then he pulled out in front of me. And hadn't been him, it would have probably been me when he got hit. And that was, so I mean, my family was weird like that. The last time I seen my mother, actually I was there, but uh, Ginger had went with me to spend a week or two with Grandma, and I was actually going to go from there to take over uh, the Fox morning show in Cincinnati, and we took my mother and I took Ginger back to the airport to fly her back to California, and she's hysterical. She is absolutely hysterical. No, a matter of fact, I was flying back with her, and we could see her in the plane window. That's when they would let you go upstairs,
Yes.
and we could see her just hysterical. And it dawned on me because when we were there, she wouldn't let Ginger go to sleep. She'd keep her up all night playing games or something. Just wouldn't let her. And it dawned on me that she thinks that's the last time she's going to see her.
Oh, wow.
And so now later, in just a month later, I come back, thought I'd spend a couple weeks with her, and then I go to Cincinnati and take this show, and that's when she died.
Oh,
Victim of an armed robbery, and had a brain aneurysm, and that's how she died.
yeah.
But she had a premonition of it. I mean,
That's a gift. Yeah. My mother had that gift. My mother actually didn't realize it at the time, but she had a dream that about her own death because I called her. My mother-in-law passed away 2 weeks before my mother. So I call my mother and tell her that my mother-in-law, Loretta, had just passed away. And she says, wow, Denise, I had a dream last night that Frankie, which is my youngest daughter, was crying. And you said, why are you crying? And she said, because grandma died. And 2 weeks later, she died. And my mother-in-law was not Frankie's grandmother, by the way, step grandmother. So she had a premonition about, she always had a gift. She always saw something coming. So it's a gift.
oh yeah, it is. It really is. It really is.
So you believe Sam in his heart knew his time was short, you think?
Pardon?
Or he,
Oh, he knew. I don't know if he. I can't just say that I knew he was going to die. He knew something was going to happen to him.
he knew something.
Yeah, and it probably was death because when he was laying out there and negotiating with somebody, saying, "I don't want to die. I don't want to die.
Yeah.
I don't want to die," and then just went, "Okay, okay, okay," and that was it.
Now, Bill, can you clear up about, okay, about that because, Carl LeBove
Oh yeah.
came out with his version, and I don't know if you realize it, but they took it off YouTube, so you can't find it anymore. But but people will watch when the first time I interviewed you, where you talk about Sam's final moments, they're saying, "Oh, but his best friend was holding him." Oh, so can you clear that up?
Well,
I know
first,
you already did it before.
no one was holding Sam.
Okay.
The accident happened, and the security guy couldn't get the door of his Trans Am open. He is hit head on, and he is in a fiberglass Trans Am. And so I guess I was right behind him, and I slid the van up to be as close as I could. Then I jumped out and told him to move. And I guess just the adrenaline, because I'm not a big guy, but the adrenaline, I jerked the door open. Sam was sitting in his seat, but he was leaning over the armrest in the middle. And only things he had on him is he had like 4 scratches on his head, I guess, where he hit the windshield. And but when I opened the door, he was telling me his words were, "Why now, brother? Why now?" And so I told him, I said, "Sam, we got help on the way. Don't move." Everything, which I didn't know if we could or not. I had his phone, my phone. I couldn't get anything on there, but there was help on the way, but I didn't know that. But I was telling him help is on the way. And so then I'm not going to get into all of it because it gets drawn out, but I opened up the door to the guy's truck because there was gas all over underneath it, and he couldn't get out. And he went around and looked at his truck. I'll never forget. He gets around, looks at the front of the truck, says, "Look what he did to my effing truck."
Oh my God. Oh my
And
God.
so,
What you
and
must have wanted to do to
he
him.
was a big football player, and I grabbed him by the back of the neck, his shirt. I said, "I want you to come over. I want you to look at these people because you're probably going to work for them the rest of their life. Then sit your ass down on the side of the road." And he had a passenger with him, another kid, and they did. And well, now they told me that, or I went over and checked on Malika, and uh, she was passed out. She wasn't knocked out. She had drank quite a bit, I guess.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, and so I couldn't bring her to, but I knew she had a strong pulse and stuff. And so then I went back around to Sam, and I got his. That's when I got his phone. I've been trying on my phone, but couldn't get anything. Okay, Sam started scooting out of the car,
Oh,
and he weighed 280 pounds. There was no way we could keep him in this car, and I'm worried about a neck injury or something. He might get
sure.
paralyzed, and so, but I knew we couldn't keep him there. So a couple of the guys that had stopped, I asked them to come over, help me, lay him here between the door and the car. And so they did. So none of us was holding Sam. Carl, and the way I guess I'm part of the reason for the confusion is because the next morning he's on Howard Stern and he's talking about how he was holding Sam, and Sam was telling him, "I don't want to die," and everything else, and said, "Okay, okay, okay." And of course, when Carl would lie, he gets real dramatic about it. And so I'm listening to it, and later on that day, Howard had me on, but I thought I'm not gonna I'm not gonna make an issue out of this, make it look like we got a bunch of trouble and what happened out there. So I never corrected, but I did ask Carl. I said, "Carl, why did you say that? Because you and the security guy were walking 30 feet away." And I go, "Why did you say that?" And he goes, "Well, man, we both have different memories." I go, "No, we don't have different memories. I was there. I know the memory.
Mhm.
I was there and I wasn't holding him." And, but I said, I heard very clearly, I said, he wasn't looking at me, looking at somebody. And so I told him, I said, I heard very clearly what he said. And so that's where it doesn't surprise me that they took it down.
Yeah, I'm glad they
Because
took it down.
it really wasn't the truth. And I wasn't going to bust Carl on it. So, uh, I let him go ahead and do it. So I'm responsible for, a lot of it. And then Carl started saying all kinds of stuff. Then he came out and said something about that uh, he and I made up this story so that more people would get saved. And it just got so bad that I told Carl, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so I did a renewal for some people in Vegas, and Carl knew him, and he came. Now, I'll never forget the last time I seen him, and he didn't know that he had cancer at that time. I'm sure he had it, but he didn't know it. I
Yeah.
remember him coming up to me, and he goes, "Brother, I just want to let bygones be bygones, and I'm in a good place now, and everything else." And so I told him, and I'm not ashamed of that, because I told him, I said, "Carl, I've let bygones be bygones 3 times with you. Now, you don't live in my world anymore. You don't exist in my world." And so then I guess, he got cancer and was dying, and I had to go do a funeral for my niece there in Vegas. So I called his sister-in-law, And I told her, I said, would you ask Carl if he would like me to stop in and talk to him?
You have a good heart.
And so she took it quite a while. I think Carl actually died before she called me back and said he didn't want to do that. And I said, that's fine then.
Oh,
That was up to him.
yeah.
And so
And
that,
who knew? Maybe he felt too sick and he didn't want to be seen the way he was. Who knows?
I think that I personally think he didn't want to see me
Mm.
because I mean he had drugged me into, when he was he went back to court after he'd already lost. I'd got the attorney for him and paid him everything else myself.
Yeah.
And then they wanted to move it out of LA to San Bernardino, so he got out of so much of the limelight. He didn't want to do that. He was never sober at any of the meetings they showed up for. And so she was 6 years old, and the court ruled that in the state of California, if you don't contest paternity in the first 2 years of their life, then you are the legal parent, the legal father. So it didn't make any difference. And he also wouldn't take a blood test, but it doesn't make any difference if you are, you know, blood wise, their father, you are legally, well, years later, he goes on all these shows, and one of them was Joey Behar, and tells him that I had conspired with his wife, which I hadn't talked to
Oh,
probably in 10 years, to keep this quiet. And I told him, I said, dude, do you really think anybody cares if Sam had a daughter and
some people would be
everything else?
excited by that to know that
Huh?
he left a legacy. Some people would be excited to know that he has
Yeah.
left a legacy.
But the way she found out, and she was 16 at the time, was Carl on the Howard Stern show
Yeah.
saying, this is not my daughter. This is Sam Kinison's daughter.
That's how she found out.
That's how she found out, was
That's
hearing that.
terrible.
And he had not seen her since she was 6 years old. He never paid a dime of child support, not one dime. So he owed him
Terrible.
over $200,000 in child support. And so up until then, last time I seen him, other than that thing in Vegas, is he went to court to try to
Yeah,
prove, you know,
that he
that
wasn't
he
the
didn't
father.
know that this was his daughter. And
Yeah.
it was embarrassing. I guess he thinks they don't keep court records. And so he didn't have an attorney because he said he didn't feel like he needed one. The judge admonished him 2 or 3 times. You really need someone to represent you. And he goes, no, I think once I tell you my story.
Yeah.
And so every time he started out with the story, it was Bill Kinison and my ex-wife. And he goes, I don't know who Bill Kinison is. He's not a party to this action. And party to this action. And so finally, the judge just goes, I've got some questions I want to ask you. And he goes, do you remember Dr. So-and-so? And it was the doctor, she had a C-section, and it was the doctor that had done it. And so Carl was like, no, sir, I don't. And he goes, well, I have an affidavit. Have you ever been in court on this before? No, sir. No, sir. He said, well, yeah, you were 12 years ago. And I have an affidavit from this doctor back then in that when you was in court before, and I'm going to read his words. He said
Oh
that
boy.
he delivered the baby, and the first words that your ex-wife said is, oh my God, it's Sam's. And so he's going, and now you want me to believe you didn't know this was Sam's child
Wow.
back when back when she was born. And he was like, no, no, sir, I didn't. He said, well, you lost 12 years ago and you still lost today. So the judgments stay in place. And that, for me, that was it, to put this young lady who I'm in touch with now. And
I'm so glad. I was going to ask you that. I'm so glad that you
in
are in touch with
college,
her.
huh?
I'm so glad you're in touch with her. I was going to
Oh,
ask you
yeah.
that. How is she
She's
doing? She's
Bowling
good?
Green University, and
Good for her.
yeah, we talk frequently.
Nice.
She looks just like Sam.
Oh,
I mean, there could be no denying. And I took
I
a blood
love
test,
it.
by the way. She asked me if I would take a test. I said, sure, I will. So I took it, and it was 99% that one of us Kinison brothers was the father. Well, the only one I know of that slept with his mother was Sam. So, but anyhow,
Wow. I think that's so wonderful. So you're the closest thing to her father to her on earth.
yeah.
That's amazing.
And we're still trying to work out where, because I haven't personally seen her since she was 6 years old.
Oh, oh, you
And
got to meet. Yeah, you
oh
got to have
yeah,
that
yeah,
meeting.
we keep trying to work it out, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Does she
That's
watch? Does she watch any footage of him? Does
I
she?
sent her everything that I had
Okay.
on her dad,
Yeah.
and articles and every CD, DVD that I had, and she wants to wait until she can be with me and wants to ask me,
Oh,
personal questions and things like that.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Seems like a
Yeah.
wonderful gal. She's had a hard time. She's had a
Yeah.
hard time.
Yeah. So he had a ginger after all. He just didn't
He
know
just
it.
did. I don't know if he didn't know it or not.
Oh, well,
I didn't
that's
know it.
true. That's true. You don't know what he knew. That's true.
I didn't know it until she was 6 years old. I didn't know that what happened
Right.
with her saying, oh my God, it's Sam's. Sherry
Probably because
seemed to
she
know
looked
it.
just like
As
him
soon
when
as
she
she
was
seen it,
born.
I'm telling you, that's Sam's baby. And I'm looking, just looks like a baby to me.
Yeah.
I can't tell it,
They
but then
say that when a baby is born, it looks just like the father, so the mother knows who the father is. I know that sounds funny, but that's a
no, it seemed
saying.
like that mother knew.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I love oh my gosh, I love you. I love Sherry. I love your family, and I love hearing your stories. And I don't want to wait a long time again to get you back on. So let's please do this
Anytime
again.
you did try to get me on a couple times and then it just didn't work out.
That's okay. Even on my side, I was supposed to do it last week with you and I couldn't. So that's okay. We just got to keep
That's all
trying.
right.
Yeah.
You look beautiful. You still look beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you
And you
so
do a
much.
great job. I watched some of your other shows that you do
Thank
with other
you.
people. You're a good interviewer.
I
You are.
appreciate that. That means a lot to me. That really does.
Well, I do
That means a lot
still
to me.
do a lot of interviews, and I'm telling you, you're as good as anyone that you make it very comfortable to talk to. So,
Thank
and
you.
I think that's the real secret.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of look at it as a conversation. It's just a conversation. Like we're in the same house. Yeah.
Well, you're good
That's
at
how,
it.
thank
You're
you.
good at it. And I
Well,
hope your family's well. And
thank you. Yes, everybody's doing good. My youngest daughter, she flew the coop at 18. She went down to Florida, but now she's back. So
all right.
I'm happy. I like when they're close.
Well,
This
my
way,
daughter flew the coop at 35, I guess, and so we just followed her.
I like that.
She came to Texas. We just came to Texas too.
I love that. I love that. Well, tell her she'll appreciate this. Tell her I spent 2 weekends ago with the Brady Bunch. I was with Barry
She
Williams,
played
Christopher
she
Knight.
played Marcia in
Yep.
the television version.
That's why. That's why. Yeah. Tell her I was with the Brady's.
She
They
would
had
be a
a.
great interview. She'd be a great interview.
I would love to interview
Oh,
her.
she would be a great interview.
Oh,
She's got a lot of
okay.
interesting stories.
Okay. So you're going to be my manager and you're going to set that up for me, right?
You know what? I'll talk to her.
I would
I'll
love it.
talk to
Tell
her.
her I would love to interview her.
And she
That would
looks
be
like
great.
a mother. She's just as beautiful as can be. And
Aw.
she did a she bought, when she was in the business. I didn't want her ever to be in the business. I don't like the Hollywood business, but I left that up to her, and she did a lot of work. She was on a soap opera for several months.
Nice.
She was in the movie. I can't think the name of it, where it was a woman bounty hunter. His life
Mm.
story actually,
Oh, wow.
and and did she did well enough. She bought her own condo. She bought a condo and a house. Bought several cars, and she's talented as can be and beautiful as can be. I'll talk to her. I'll talk to her and
Yes,
see.
please. Please. I've seen pictures of her. She is beautiful. And I saw her in the movie and I thought she made an amazing Marsha Brady. She really was very convincing.
Oh, you did see her?
Yeah, I saw her. And it's funny because when I met you, I already seen the movie and I didn't put two and two. I didn't know that was your daughter. So here we're having all these conversations and I didn't know until later on that was your daughter.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that
So,
movie years ago and then yeah, great movie. Yeah, and she was fabulous in it. Yep.
and she still looks about the same.
That's
Talk
wonderful.
about somebody that doesn't age. She doesn't age.
Yeah.
She
Well,
is just
something in
beautiful.
the Kinison genes, I'll tell you, because you and Sherry look amazing. Now, I wanted to ask you real quick for those that are following you on Facebook. So you got hacked? Your Facebook account was hacked?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
And
which is the real one?
the real one is Bill Kinison, but the picture is actually was a promo picture of a movie I did called Brendan Manning, his life story, and I played. He was a priest. It's a true story. Actually, a great movie. And so they had me audition as a preacher, and then uh, after I auditioned for it, they it was just one guy there, and he said, "Would you come back in 2 hours?" And I said, "Sure." So I came back, and they said, "We want you to play his best friend." That was,
Oh,
and they were. He was a Presbyterian priest, and so said, "We think you'd be fantastic." So I had a pretty big part in it, but I got to. I want to get into all the story on it, but Brendan Manning was. I had heard of him when I was in the ministry, and he was an alcoholic, bad alcoholic, and but his saying was, uh, "God loves you just the way you are, not the way you're supposed to be,"
I like
and
that.
his message was unconditional love. And I thought even back then, because all the other preachers going, that's an excuse for his lifestyle and everything else. But I really liked it then. So but I got to meet. I mean, Brendan Manning had died
Yeah.
from alcoholism, by the way,
Mm.
and but
You
I
got to
got to
meet the
meet the
friend.
best friend that I was playing,
There you
and
go.
he told me several stories that were just unbelievable about Brennan. And so maybe sometime we'll talk about that because he put himself in a dangerous prison in Italy to experience
Oh,
and try to affect the prisoners there. He was out. He put himself in the wilderness in the desert. I forget in what country, and never saw a human being for 6 months. They would bring out water and food for him to eat, and in his way of doing penitence on it, just
wow.
unbelievable,
That is wow.
unbelievable stuff.
How can I
And
see
so
the movie? Where is the movie play? Is it
you'd have to
on?
get it on video, I think. I think it went to video.
Okay.
It's called Brennan, and it's a
I'm
life
gonna
story
look that
of
up.
Brennan Manning. And it's good. It's good. It's kind of heart wrenching. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, here this guy is affecting lives, and he was married to a Miss in Louisiana, and obviously that marriage, you know, dissolved with his alcoholism.
Mhm.
And even up until he died, he lived in an apartment across the street. This 4-lane highway was a bar, and he was blind now. He had wet brain. He would manage
No.
to get over there and get back
To the
drunk
bar and back, drunk?
yeah,
Oh God. God
and not
bless him.
get run over. I mean, it was an amazing story. And there's also,
Wow.
I think there's a book out on Brennan
I'm
Manning.
gonna look for that. I want to watch that. I'm gonna give you a movie to watch, you and Sherry. and Ginger could watch it too. It's called Nona's, and it's a true story. It's a restaurant owner here on Staten Island. His name is Joe Scaravella, and he grew up Italian kid. His mother sending him to the store on Sunday to get the Italian bread, the Zeppelis, while his mother and grandmother were making the Sunday gravy. Okay, some people called it gravy, and I was raised calling it gravy. And anyway, when his mother passed away, he took the money from her life insurance policy, opened up a restaurant, and decided to hire real life grandmothers, nonas, to do the cooking. Only restaurant of its kind that does this. So they wrote an article about him 2 years ago. Fast forward, someone saw this and said, this is going to make a great movie. They bought the life rights and they just came out with it. It's called Nona's. Vince Vaughn plays him. You got Brenda Vaccaro as one of the Nonas, Talia Shire, Lorraine Bracco, and Susan Sarandon. It's a great movie. We haven't had a real good movie in a very long time. This is a family movie, a fun movie. One thing I have to just caution you. You have to either have food in front of you while you're watching it or have a full stomach because, oh my God, all the food throughout the whole movie, you'll be starving by the end of this movie if you're not eating. So it's on Netflix.
I'm going to definitely watch it.
It's the number one movie on
Netflix. I wrote it
Netflix.
down.
Yeah.
When I first started calling it gravy, The Sopranos.
They would call it gravy.
Yeah, they called it all gravy, and I was like,
funny.
It's not sauce.
I know.
Even in their conversation, it's a great gravy here.
It's gravy. I just did a show where we talked about this, and I said, well, growing up, we called it gravy because I guess my grandmother from the old country, they called it gravy, not brown gravy. There's a difference. Brown gravy is brown gravy. And when we would go to the store for meat, it would actually say on the package gravy meat that you put in the tomato sauce. So I was like, you see, they were even calling it gravy meat. They were calling it gravy. So that's so funny. But so when you watch Nona's, it's Staten Island. The guy lives, his restaurant's right near me. I took Brenda Vaccaro there maybe a year and a half ago when she told me she was in this movie. I said, Brenda, that restaurant is on Staten Island. Do you want to go? And she's like, really? Yeah. So I picked her up in the city, drove her to the restaurant. She met the owner. She met the Nona that she's playing, which is hysterical because she says to the Nona came out of the kitchen, little old Italian lady. She's 91 years old. So Brenda says to her, yeah, I play a Nona. She goes, there's a scene where I'm sitting at the dining room table and I'm having a conversation with my dead husband. She goes, that's me. I'm a widow. I sit at the table and I talk to my husband and you're playing me. Fun. It's so funny. So funny.
And I bet it's great food.
The food is great. And what's really nice is he started with just Italian Nonas. Now all around the world Nonas. He has them from Egypt, Panama, anyway, Japan, any way you could think of. So he brings all these different cultures, and they're bringing their family recipes to the restaurant, which is really nice.
Well, if I ever come up there, I want you to take me.
Oh, absolutely. We'll make a reservation. Now you can't even get a reservation since the movie came out because it's a small place. And now everybody heard about it. He said he's going to open up another location. But yes, you guys come to New York and we'll definitely go.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. Well, it was great talking to you. All right. I'm going to ask you to say a quick prayer before we leave because you're one of my favorite preachers.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this opportunity that we've had to talk and discuss and know that you're still on the throne.
Yes.
I ask that you bless this country.
Yes.
This country is built on Christian values. You were the one that was able to get this country created. And I ask that you start bringing peace. You can use the very ones that you created, and I know that you're going to come out victorious. And I'll give you all the praise. Amen.
Amen. Amen. God bless you, Bill.
God bless you, honey.
I love you. Give my love to Sherry and the family, and let's do this again soon.
I'd like to. I always like it.
Sounds good. Okay.
All right, honey.
Take care now.
I have to get up and leave you on here on the show. All right. Love you.
It's going to take me a while to get up, remember? Love you.